Hey guys, and welcome to another building session. My name is Guan, and today I thought I would show you how to create something a bit more complex using a lot of gameplay props, creating something that is unique, and as such I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful plane. Now what you're seeing right now is a game that I'm working on. Whoop. That sound is a bit weird. It's a placeholder sound for when you're boosting. But this is a small plane that controls almost how you would expect a plane to control. The game is about picking up these metals around the world. And it has a pretty crazy boosting sound right now. So, you can go to the left. Like that. You can go to the right, you can go up, down, you can bank to the left and bank to the right, and of course you can boost. You can see this small green arrow, and this arrow is constantly guiding you towards the next pickup, or rather the nearest pickup. And today's video is going to focus on how we make these controls in CREY. Oh, but let's get started. Okay, so here we are in a empty level, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to place a directional mover from the library, CREY, and gameplay. These are gameplay props. Gameplay props can be used to generate all the game logic within a game. If you want to move something, rotate something, if you want to have the player walk into a sensor, if you want to hide something, maybe make a custom camera, this is where you will find all these functions. So let's start with the directional mover. During this play session you will see me using the snap grid on 5 and the rotate snap on 6 a lot. You'll also see me use freeze and reset. So let me quickly show those. So the snap is a grid, makes everything much easier to align. The rotate snap is of course a rotate grid, otherwise everything will be free. And the freeze and the reset is something that is very handy when you're working with gameplay props. So let's look at this, the settings within the directional mover. The mover can, let me just unfreeze it. So the mover can move forward or backwards. You see this little train moving as I turn on the speed. It can do this when it's turned on, and it can also do this when it's turned off, like so. The transition time is the time it takes to go between these two states. So if there's 0, it goes immediately. If there's a large one, you can see it slides and then it starts going to its on speed. Alright. So you'll see me use freeze and reset quite a lot. For example now, freeze, reset to get it back on point. Alright, so 0, 0 for this, much easier to work with. Alright, so we're building a plane. Let's start by just making a exemplary. That's not a word. Let's start by making a fake plane here. So this is the base of the plane, and we're going to make some wings just so we have a sense of direction. This is not very beautiful. I'm going to glue this to this so that it stays together. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how CREY, the visual scripting system or the visual programming system works in CREY, let me just quickly go over it. So as I mentioned, you have the gameplay props inside the library with all these different functions, but besides that you have 3 different wires. You have the glue, the target, and the power. So if you glue something to something, then it is now connected, which means if we start moving the mover forward, like so, everything that is glued to it will move with it as well. You can also see it like this, and however it does not affect the other way, so I can move this freely even though it is glued to this one. When it comes to target, target will apply a functionality to an object. So now we're applying the movement functionality to our small fake plane here, which looks like this. So essentially the same, however, it is not bound to it, meaning that I can move this wherever I want, and it's only the forward moving movement that is applied to the fake plane. And lastly, we have power. So let's take a gameplay prop from the power section here, a generator for example, and let's use the power onto the gameplay prop. And this means a generator has a time it sends on and a time it sends off. So this will essentially mean that for 2 seconds it's on and for 2 seconds it's off. So if we go into the mover and we say when it's on it's going to move at speed 10, when it's off it's going to move at speed 0, and there will be 0 transition time, it's going to look like this. So for 2 seconds moving and for 2 seconds standing still. So that's very quickly showing you the 3 major components. I recommend that if you do not understand this completely, we have some nice tutorials in the game CREY, in the menu Learn CREY, where you can explore power, glue and target much more in depth. I will recommend you looking at those before, otherwise this might be a bit too advanced. Anyway, so let's look at what we're going to do here. So we have the fake plane. Later we're going to import a good looking plane, but for now we're going to use the fake plane because it's also very good to have a base where you kind of apply all your controls to, so you don't have to take into consideration what model you're using. When you're doing it this way, you can just import a nice plane, and you can import a different plane, a different plane, and a different plane, or something else, a car, whatever you want, and then just glue it onto your base, and then it will behave how you want it to. Alright. So, first of all, we need the plane to go forward. We have already accomplished this. Like that. Forward. Alright. But for now, we're going to set this to 0, or we could just turn it off, but let's set it to 0 so it doesn't move and we can play around while it's not frozen. So the kind of movements that we want is we want the plane to move this way, turn left, turn right. We're going to want the plane to be able to bank left, right, and bank left. We're going to make the plane go upwards and downwards, and that's about it. So let's start by having the plane move to the right and to the left. So for that we're gonna need a rotator, both for right and for left. So the rotator rotates an object, again like the mover, with the speed on and with the speed off. Pretty simple. So I'm gonna unaffect that, and like this, go back to normal. So for the left one, we're going to say that it should move at a speed of 25 when it's turned on. And for the right one, we're going to say that it should move at a speed of 25 when it's on. Alright, unfreeze these so you can see they're moving. This is moving to the left and this is moving to the right. Now, but we only want this to happen when the player actually pushes something. And for that, we're going to need the input trigger. Sorry, I was a bit fast. We're going to need the input trigger in order to accomplish this. So we're going to place an input trigger here and here. Now the input trigger, if you go to the settings, it will allow you to press a certain key, and then it will send power when you press that key. So for turning left and turning right, we're going to use the Q and the E keys. And for that, we're going to take custom, click and press key to bind. I've clicked it. Now I press Q. The UI doesn't quite follow up right now, but you can see here that it is correct. And for this one, we're going to set a custom to E. So now we have Q on this one, and we have E on this one. We're going to send power to this rotator, power to this rotator. Just gonna reset it for good measure. So what happens now is that when I press Q, this one will turn left. When I press E, this one will turn right. Alright. So in order for this rotation to be applied on our fake plane here, we're going to need to target that plane. Alright. However, there's one big thing here that we've forgotten. And let me use the mover to illustrate this. Directional mover. So let's give it a really, really slow movement. Alright, so now we're moving forward just like we want to. Let's say we start rotating the plane. Oh, we're still moving forward, even though I think we should be moving this direction now, because we've turned the plane. In order to achieve this, we are going to, let me just Control C, all that stuff. In order for us to make sure that it aligns correctly with the direction of the plane, we're going to glue the mover to the plane. So now we're both affecting it and we've glued the mover. This means that when we turn the plane, we turn the mover as well, which makes it go in the direction we want it to go. Alright, Control C to get it in the right position. Alright, and of course we're going to have to do the same here. So glue everything to the bottom of the plane so that everything will be in relation to, you know, the plane's position. Like so. Alright, I'm turning this one off again. The mover. Good. So now we can move it, but it's kind of difficult for us to see anything. So I'm gonna use another gameplay prop from the library called the camera. Now the camera comes with a sensor because that's a very typical way of using it. But let's just remove that. So I can right click on the camera settings and I can go into camera test and press start, and this gives me the camera's view. I can place it somewhere nice. Let's put the plane in the middle here, like this. Good. Now a camera actually does need some power, so I'm going to use what is called a connector. Sorry if I'm going a bit fast here, but I'm going to use a connector. A connector can send power based on the number of inputs that it gets, and this gets no input. You can see it sends power to the camera. It gets 0 inputs, and that's exactly what we want because now it just sends power all the time. So if I press 9 for playtesting, or I press the UI, then you can see we're now seeing from the camera's perspective, and if I press Q, it moves the way we want it to move. Alright, so far so good. I'm just going to freeze reset. I also have to toggle on the grids again. So the next movement that we want to make is this one, the banking. At least I think it's called banking. So once again we're going to take 2 input triggers. Now I'm trying to have it kind of be aligned so it's easy for me to see what's going on here. So for the banking we're going to need yet another rotator like so. However, the rotator as it is right now will only rotate this way or this way. So what we actually need to do is rotate the rotator. Like so. So now it rotates exactly the way we want it to. If I just show it, I can go even closer, I think, like that. So now it rotates on the right axis like that. Alright, but we only want it to happen when you press D. So we're going to use WASD movement. Now D is also the same as right. It's the same bind. And when we're banking left, we're going to use left. Like that. Alright, so let's take the rotator And also make sure we have one here. Like that. Now this is of course going the wrong way. We want it to be a negative, and let's say something like 175. 175. Now this is moving because I haven't drawn a power wire yet, like that. Alright. So once again, we need to affect and glue in order to apply our effect. I'm sorry, did I say effect? We need to target and glue like that. So now if we press our 9, we can now bank right and bank left. Oh, I can see there's a gluing problem here. Let me just fix that real quick. So this one, I'm just gonna remove everything, the wires, because it seems like I've done something wrong. Alright, so the rotator has to affect, target. Rotators has to target, and they have to be glued to it as well, like that. So when we press 9, bank, bank, just like that, perfect. And also we still have the old movement, and now you can start to see how we can kind of bank and then turn downwards. That way we can start maybe, yeah, aligning the plane in different ways. Okay. So the next kind of movement that we want is the up and down, like that. It's up and down. So we're going to need, yep, you guessed it, an input trigger. I'm turning on grid and snap grid with 5 and 6. Input trigger, and of course cycling through the quick bar down here, getting a rotator. Now you can see that I'm turning it this way because now we want it to rotate on this axis. Alright, like this. So let's try to unfreeze, and let's look at the rotation we want. So this one takes the plane down. Let's use 45. This one should then have a minus 45. Just like that. Alright, so we're gonna power from our input trigger, but first we have to make sure that the input trigger is set to the correct input. And so when we're going down, we want to be pressing the tip of the plane essentially, which is why we're going to use W, which is forward. And when we're going back, we're going to be pressing the back of the plane, which essentially means using backwards, which is the S key. Once again, we're going to target the base, and we're going to glue so everything is in relation to the base of the plane, and so that we know the rotators will follow it and be on the same angle as the base of the plane. Let me press 9. Alright, so we still have the old movement, the banking, and now we should have up and down. Although I can feel that now I'm pressing W, it goes up, and now I'm pressing S, it goes down, and it should be reversed. Once again. So let's reverse it. This should then be forward, and this should then be backwards. Alright. Let me just test it real quick. So I'm pressing S, and it should bring the tip up, and W, tip down. Perfect. And banking. Ah, nice. So now we almost have a plane that is controllable. Actually, I think we do have a plane that is controllable. So let's go to the library with tab and go to boxes, and I've made this plane with no arrow box. Wow, there it is. Alright, so let's just place it here. So this is the plane that we will be controlling. Now the plane in itself is actually just a bunch of primitives that I've placed here. Let me just close this one. So I opened this box by going to the menu and saying open box. Within this box you can see there's multiple other boxes. There's a wing here, for example. If I open that one, there's even more boxes inside that wing. There's missiles here. This is just a way of making a hierarchy for your objects when you're building something, right? So let's say I wanted to extend the tip of the plane a little bit. This box is the kind of the center of the plane. So I could go into CREY, primitives. I could take, for example, a cylinder. I could rotate it like so, make it a bit smaller, take it to the front of the plane and extend it, right? So that would be a weird thing to do, but it is a thing that you can do. Could also make it a bit smaller. I could say, alright, now it almost looks like a rifle actually, so I could copy it, make it a bit bigger, make it a bit shorter to give it a bit of detail. You know, this is just the way that you can build with primitives and make something nice. Of course, after I've done this, I would have to select both of these by holding Control, pressing B, like so. Now it's part of the box. You can see if I copy this box, it's rotated, but it is exactly how we want it to be. Alright, so for the sake of making sure things look good, I'm going to delete it again. Now, let's take our plane. Actually, first things first, let's make this one way smaller now, because there's not really any need for us to have it. There's no need to have the wings or anything. Make it smaller. I'm going to right click it, go to properties and make it invisible. So now you can see through it, which means it is invisible when you start playing. I'm going to take my plane, make sure that it's aligned correctly above this. This is also why I always work with the grid on, because then I know stuff is aligned. I'm going to glue this to the base, which will have the result, this result. Banking, banking, moving right, moving left, going up, going down. So you see, I just imported this really quick box that I've spent some time building at a different day, or maybe someone else had built it for me, and I could just apply it to my logic easily with no problem. So, shall we try to give the plane some speed? Like that. I need to turn it off. Like that, you see? And let's press play, and now we have a plane. Of course, it is not exactly how I showed you in the video. So, one thing we can do quickly is we can take this and we can make sure that it is glued to the base as well. Now that would make the camera follow the plane. It's a pretty crazy effect, but it is better because now we can fly with the plane. I just wanted to align it a little better because it did look like it was misaligned. Alright, so let's go back like so. Now, one thing you might notice when we press play here is that everything is kind of very stiff, right? Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, up, down. Everything is very stiff. There's not really any smoothing. Also, we're moving ridiculously slow. But we can luckily fix all of this, which will be one of the last things I'm going to do in this video. First of all, let's increase the speed to something more impressive, 150. You see it says 16, but that's just a minor bug right now. 150. The second thing we're going to do, and this is way more important, is we're going to add a transition time on all of our rotators. So if we take this first one, you can see we rotate by a speed of 25, and when we're not pressing E in this case, then the key E, then we're rotating at a speed of 0. But we don't want it to go from 25 to 0 with a transition time of 0 because that will be an instant effect. So we're going to add half a second, like that. Now if I press, right, we're moving much faster. When if I press left now, I'm going to press Q, instant effect. If I press right, ooh, smoothing effect, right? Way more realistic. All of this other stuff is still instant. So let's go ahead and add the transition time on all of our rotators. Here we go. And like that. And like that. Whoop. So now when we fly around, up, down is way more smooth. Left, right is way more smooth. Banking is way more smooth. See, it's not as stiff as before. It actually feels kinda nice. Bank right, go. So that looks a lot better, and it also feels a lot better. Freeze and the grid. So that was actually the last thing I wanted to do in this particular video. In the next video I want to go over how we make the flaps on the plane move while you're moving in the air. You can see you have these flaps here that are designed to move while you're flying. You have them on all the different parts of the plane. Also this one has to move. Everything will have to move, and that was going to look really cool. We're also going to add a different camera, a camera that is more smooth and follows the plane in a much cooler way. We're going to add an exhaustion burst that's going to give a nice effect of us actually moving through space. We're also going to add a speed burst, so you can hold down shift in order to go much faster. But this will all be in the next video because I think this one is already long enough and probably even difficult enough. So yeah, let me know on Discord or in the comments of this YouTube video if you want to see anything specific, and I will see you in the next video, guys.